So you want to start making your rankings, but you really just don't know how to get that done. Well, this video is really to help you develop your own rankings. That way you can go into your draft already solid, having things laid out for you with a grain of salt, right? It's one of those things that you don't want to keep depending on all these so-called experts out there and the default rankings that NFL.com and ESPN and Yahoo and all these people have for you. Well, it's time to stop starting and just saying, enough is enough. I don't want to default on any type of rankings anymore. I want to develop my own and I need help doing it. Well, this video is going to help you develop your own rankings. There's a lot of things we have to go through, a lot of examples, and at the end, I'm going to break down one specific example, show you the kind of the basis of how I develop my rankings and how what you see on this channel all the time. So let's go ahead and get started and get into the first slide here. So as you see, I went through the last 5 years, 2018 through 2022, and I went through all of the running backs and pretty much the RB1. So that means the top 12 running backs each and every year. And I want you to focus in on the top 5 here. So as you can see, if you get a running back in the top 5, it's really going to set you apart. If we look here, the average is 259.8. So just go ahead and round that up to say 260 points is what you're really shooting for to have that top 5 running back in the league. After the top 5, it starts to level out just a little bit to where it's really getting to be close. So if you want to nail that top 5 type of back, that can really change the season for you. Let's go and break down each individual year, and I want to show you some things that happens in the top 5 and show you how fast these guys do turn around. It's never consistent to having the same top 5 year in and year out. So back in 2018, we ended up with Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Ezekiel Elliott, with Todd Gurley being the #1 running back there, scoring 342.6 points in 2018. Now, if we scoot over to 2019, there's only 2 backs that appear on this list from the year before in 2018. Christian McCaffrey, he's now the #1 guy. He moved up 3 spots from last year. You have Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, and Ezekiel Elliott, who moved up 1 spot. He is now in the #4 spot, and then Dalvin Cook. And this is that year that Christian McCaffrey had that outlier year with 413 points, 413.2 points. Let's move over to 2020, and we actually saw 3 running backs appear here on the top 5 than they did the year prior. Alvin Kamara was the new #1 running back, followed by Derrick Henry, who moves up 3 spots. Dalvin Cook, who moves up, Derrick Henry was actually at the #3 spot. He's now at the #2 spot. Dalvin Cook was at the 5 spot, now at the #3 spot. David Montgomery appears here in the 4th spot, and Aaron Jones was at the #2 running back, fell all the way down to the top, into the top 5 at the #5 spot. Coming in at 2021, we have yet another new #1 running back here, Jonathan Taylor, followed by Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, and James Conner. Something you might want to point out here, not one player in the top 5 in 2021 was in the top 5 in 2020. Moving right along to 2022, we're talking about Austin Eckler, who was the #2 last year, moving up to the #1. He is the only running back that was on there last year that's in this one. #2, Christian McCaffrey. #3, Josh Jacobs. 4, Derrick Henry, and Nick Chubb. Now, one thing I want to point out to you guys that there's a difference between all of these guys and every single year is that not one time the #1 running back was the same. I mean, you're talking about Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, and Todd Gurley. It switches all the time, so it's good to kind of set your own rankings. Don't worry about the default and what these guys said, oh, just because they did it last year, they're going to do it this year. That is not always the case, and almost nearly never the case. And only in 1 year out of the last 5 years did we actually see 3 guys back in the top 5. Other than that, you're seeing 1, maybe 2 guys in the top 5 return to the top 5 next season. So it's really important to put your thought, your emphasis into your own top 5 and develop your own rankings. That way you can set yourself apart from everybody else who's just using the default rankings. So let's go over and some more information here. As you can see, this is the running backs that averaged 7.3 touches per game in 2022. There was only 4 running backs who averaged over 20 touches a game in 2022. We're talking about Derrick Henry at 23.9, Josh Jacobs at 23.1, Saquon Barkley at 22, and Jonathan Taylor at 20. Now, you want to get those 20 average carries a game. Those are those monsters. Those are the guys that have the biggest chance of putting up the most opportunity and the most points for your team. But at an average at only 7.3 in last year in 2022, it's kind of hard to get those outlier who's getting those 20 touches a game. So the more touches, the better. You want somebody at least going to get you that 7 to 8 touches per game. Anybody under really 8 touches per game, you really don't want on your football team. You want to try to stay as high as possible. Looking at the next bit of information, we can talk about there was 11 running backs in the NFL last year who had 50 plus receptions. Number 1, Austin Eckler at 107, which is probably why he was the clear-cut #1 running back in fantasy last year, followed by Chris McCaffrey at 85. Maybe a surprise here, Leonard Fournette with 73. As of recording of this video, he is still a free agent. Ramondre Stevenson at 69 could be a sleeper running back this season. Joe Mixon at 60, Aaron Jones at 59, Alvin Kamara at 57, Saquon Barkley at 57, Jerick McKinnon at 56, who could be another sleeper that he's going very, very late in the drafts, and Josh Jacobs at 53. Last but not least, Rachaad White with 50, especially if you are playing in a half PPR or a full PPR league. You want to try to target these running backs that are getting 50 plus receptions in a game, or somebody you may move into this this type of list. So one guy that I think, as an example, could be Nick Chubb. Now with Kareem Hunt not being there, I think his receptions should be going up. Who knows if he hits into the 50 mark, but I think he's definitely going to increase his receptions. But just an example, look for players who's having different situations around there and justify it accordingly. And say if he's used to getting 20 per receptions per season, maybe something's changing. Maybe he's the only pass catching back there. Somebody leaves, whatever. You might be able to rock in 10, 15, 20 more targets or receptions to your total and kind of justify. Again, you don't know exactly what's going to happen in the NFL, but you need to put your flavor and your intelligence on it to make up your own rankings. So let's go over to the next slide here. 14 running backs averaged 7.3 yards per reception in 2022, and this is, mind you, with a 30 reception minimum. Derrick Henry definitely by far 12.1 yards per reception. He was an absolute monster and an outlier among these running backs. Number 2, Tony Pollard at 9.5, David Montgomery at 9.3, Jerick McKinnon at 9.1, Travis Etienne at 9, Christian McCaffrey 8.7, Alvin Kamara 8.6, DeAndre Swift 8.1, Antonio Gibson 7.7, Dalvin Cook 7.6, Samaje Perine 7.6, Josh Jacobs 7.5, Devin Singletary 7.4, Joe Mixon 7.4. Somebody I wanted to really target out of this group would be Antonio Gibson with the 7.7. JD McKissic is no longer there. I look for Antonio Gibson to be getting a lot more of the pass catching work. You could probably see him do even more receptions this year. Things like that you have to start to pinpoint and get, start leveling up your ducks in a row and how you're going to rank these guys to, again, develop your own rankings. Don't worry about what all these so-called experts out here are saying, this is who you should draft. No, don't worry about that. Do your own thing, and you might be able to have some type of amazing rankings that nobody else is going to have because you put your own thoughts and your own efforts into it. So moving along to the next slide. Let's go over the 6 running backs averaged 4.4 yards per rush in 2022. 5 yards per carry, we have to remember, is considered elite in the NFL. Only a few running backs hit that year after year, or any year total. So these are 100 carries minimum for these running backs. Khalil Herbert 5.7 with 129 rushes. Aaron Jones 5.3 per rush with 213 rushes. Tony Pollard 5.2 with 193. Travis Etienne 5.1 with 220. Nick Chubb at 5 yards per carry at 302 carries, and Ramondre Stevenson at 5 with 210 attempts. Now you're looking for these running backs that are really going to be putting up a lot of yards per carry, because if they're getting a lot of attempts, you want them to have the biggest yards per carry, obviously, to get as many yards as possible. But I think for those running back by committees, you really want to have those higher yardage per carries. Like, for instance, Travis Etienne has a very high yards per carry. He might be in a timeshare with Tank Bigsby this year. So things like that you might want to target. You may want to shift people up or down into your rankings just based on that information. Now, with all this information that I've given you, there's something that I want to do at the very end of the video. I want to take Nick Chubb as just an example. I want to talk to you guys about. But we know Nick Chubb last season had 1,764 yards rushing with 13 touchdowns and 27 receptions. Mind you, we need to see if we want Nick Chubb to be a top 5 running back in the league. Remember what we said in the first slide. Here, you have to have 260 points on average to be in the top 5. So knowing now what we said, let's just take the 5 years that he was in Cleveland. Let's say he averaged 1,466 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 24 receptions. That was his average through the 5 years he has been there. I know last year he actually did really, really well, putting up over 1,700 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 27 receptions. Now let's keep in mind, what other scenarios happening right now with the Cleveland Browns? Well, Kareem Hunt is no longer there. Kareem Hunt is their pass catching back. So if you take the 4 years that Kareem Hunt was in Cleveland, he averaged 33 receptions per year when he was with the Cleveland Browns. So you take probably about a third of that, which is about 11 receptions, and we can tack that onto the total for Kareem Hunt. Just another one of those ways you can kind of invent your own ranking. So let's kind of lay it down. Make it real simple. Let's say he rushes for 1,800 total yards, passes and rushes, 1,800 total yards. He averages 1,466. Last year he had 1,764, and I expect there to be a bump in the yardage because all he has is Jerome Ford back there. I think he's gonna get all the work he could possibly do. I think he actually has more total yardage this season than he did last season. So I'm gonna put 1,800 total yards. That equals 180 points, meaning 1 point per every 10 yards rushing or receiving that he gets. So we're at 180 points right now. Now let's give him 12 touchdowns. He averages 10. Last year he had 13. Let's say that bumps down just a little bit. Let's just put him at 12 to be safe. For every touchdown you score 6 points. 6 times 12 is 72. So now we're at 72 points. We have 180 points for the yardage and 72 points now for his touchdowns. Let's look at his total receptions. He averages 24 while he's there. He had 27 last year. And like I said, if we remember, Kareem Hunt will be gone. So let's add some more to him and give him a nice round number of 36. That ends up with 18 points right there just based on his receptions in half PPR leagues. It would be more if obviously you were playing in full PPR, but just for this example, we're at half PPR. That puts him at a total of 270 points. And if you remember, 260 points would put him in the top 5. That means in my rankings, I'm probably going to have Nick Chubb as a top 5 running back in my rankings. So just a quick video of you guys showing you guys how you really can develop your rankings, things you want to maybe look at, some stats that maybe help you out, build up your rankings this season. And you never know what you're going to do whenever you build your own rankings and go into the draft prepared with your own analysis on there. Do your research, do everything you got. There's a lot of resources out there that you can do. So, but I hope you guys like this video. If you guys hit the subscribe button, we're popping out videos 2 to 3 times a week, going all the way up until your NFL drafts and into the season until we start getting into our starting sits and our Sunday morning live stream. So I can't wait to see you guys on the next video. Hit the like button. We'll see you guys next time.